Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today is January 23, 2026. I want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. Also want to thank Captain Beefheart for enabling me to meet today's guest, Henry Kaiser. Where are you calling from, Henry?
I'm calling from Santa Cruz, California, where it's a kind of a cold, foggy day today.
It's good to see you again. Part one was August 17th, 2025. Then we did one 16 years ago. And it's just been so much fun talking to you. You've really been a teacher to me in so many ways, and I appreciate all that. I think what I wanted to start with is this Ravi Shankar quote from 1956. For better enjoyment of Indian music, Western audience should forget about harmony and counterpoint and mixed tone colors and relax rather in the rich melody and rhythm. So that's a pretty heavy thing to say. I like it. And
I think he was only addressing himself to a stuffy classical music audience when he'd play a concert in where there normally would be a symphony or a string quartet. And those musics are so different. And the presenters weren't providing any tools for the audience to appreciate it. So,
but that's sort of an intro, and I appreciate you reacting before I even ask the question, because it's sort of like Varese saying that music is organized sound, emphasize timbre and rhythm over traditional melody and harmony.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
I don't hear melody, harmony, and rhythm. I ignore that. For some reason, I have the equivalent of perfect pitch for perfect timbre. And so I interpret everything as timbre. I interpret rhythm as timbre. I interpret melody as timbre stretched out in time in a funny way. Yeah, so that's something that I was that way to start with from when I was a kid, before I'd even heard Varese or Ligeti or anything like that.
Amazing, because we might have reviewed this and you could have you already answered it, but I have to ask it anyways. Copeland says the four ingredients or elements of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. So first of all, you've defined tone color as timbre. If you were going to explain what timbre is or tone color to the normal human in non-academic terms, like not using the word timbre, how would you describe what is tone color?
Well, if I couldn't get them to read Robert Erickson's book on the topic, I think I would need to have visual aids. I'd need to have diagrams and spectrographs or audio examples. If we hear the same note played by a flute, an electric guitar, a kazoo, a piano, and a cello, it sounds totally different. And that's one of but it's a complicated issue. And to really define it, because I know too much about it, I would have to say too much than we could say here. But
okay, but you're saying Robert Erickson's book is, what's the title of that? Do you know?
I can't remember the title, but if you just look up Robert Erickson, Ickson, you'll find it. That's a great book.
Okay, thank you. And so you have this amazing.
Let me ask a question though.
Please.
So music's melody, harmony, rhythm, and timbre, right?
That's what Copeland narrowed it down to those four. Okay. I know there's other ones. Go ahead.
Well, that's not a part of this score that happens to be sitting right beside me here on the piano.
John Cage 433.
So silence and space is just as important as melody, harmony, and rhythm.
Oh yeah. And if Aaron was here, we could suss it out deeper, but I just like to use those four as a jumping off point.
Yeah.
And I love that you referred to John Cage's 433 because it charted on the English pop charts about 10 years ago.
I actually have, let me get on my computer here 1 second. I have a list of things beyond melody, harmony, and rhythm. Okay, so here are things I consider besides melody, harmony, and rhythm. Space.
Yeah.
Emptiness.
Yeah.
Timing. So timing could be like the way Jack Venny delivers a line compared to how Red Skelton would deliver a line. Okay.
Yeah.
Dynamics.
Yeah.
ornamentation,
Yeah.
bending and articulation,
Yeah.
duration of performance,
Yeah.
shapes of the musical sounds in the kind of synesthetic sense. Do you see shapes and patterns in space when you hear music? I do.
Yeah.
Okay, whether it's improvisation, nor narrative and storytelling, how a piece of music tells a story, where it,
Yeah.
where it poses a question, where it delivers,
Yeah.
punchlines, context and frame,
Yeah.
what's around the music, purpose or teleology. And that's things like, is music for trance? Is music for dancing? Is music for
Yeah.
ritual? Is music for a spiritual purpose? Interaction with room acoustics can be a big part of music.
Yeah.
Um, and the audience as part of the music, and your a particular instrument, individual instrument, can really affect
Yeah.
what the music is. The same thing played by this on the same violin by the same person with
Yeah.
different violins can be totally different pieces of music in the end.
Yeah. Now that's beautiful. Now that is a list you made for this kind of topic, or it's someone else's?
That's a teaching list of mine for when I teach a course, which I used to do summer things a lot, like Richard Thompson's frets and refrains, lots of things like that.
Okay, so you're both a diving teacher and a music teacher.
Well, no, I'm just, I do these I used to do these summer things, National Summer Guitar Camp, things like that once in a while.
Once in a while, but you mean okay.
Yeah.
So let's
And
say
I used to be a diving teacher. I'm just a diver now, no more teaching.
okay. But how many years did you teach diving?
I taught diving for 17 years scientific diving for 17 years at UC Berkeley.
Yeah.
Those are my years as an instructor. And since then, I've been a diver in the U.S. Antarctic program. And before that, I was a diver from age 11. And I'm really just a diver. If you met me on an airplane, you didn't know what I did, I'd introduce myself as a diver. That's my identity.
That's your wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a diver.
Yeah. So
and I'm a filmmaker and an
yeah.
improviser and an experimental musician, being very precise, saying experimental musician every time I play. It's an experiment. I try to do something different, to have something surprising happen, or to learn something, or whatever.
Yeah. Like what Whitman said, I contain multitudes.
Yeah.
You're a good example. But let's go to this one because there's a lot of things I want to pursue. And this is about, let me see, where is that? Oh my God, I can't find it now. Okay. George Manupelli started the Ann Arbor Film Festival over 6 decades ago. His mantra was ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas, his mantra is there is no self-expression. Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me.
That's how I am.
I know, but I'm just saying, is art making in general, not just you can talk about you because we're going to go into that, but is art making in general, your observations of artists, is it more self-expression or more they're a vehicle for whatever technology, environments and cultures is dominant?
Seems to me like it's in Western culture, we'll speak for the United States of America and for Europe, it's 90% self-expression, which usually kind of bores me.
Wow. So 90% in the West is self-expression.
That's what I see, but maybe I'm just irritated by it, so I notice it too much. I don't know.
Yeah. Can art making be egoless?
I just try to get out of the way. So
yeah,
that's my job. I get out of the way, and wherever the music shows up, and that's that.
For all these musicians you've known and studied and played with, have you found some that seem that they're egoless, more egoless?
Well, let's go back to Cecil Taylor as an example. Cecil Taylor's had a big ego, but Cecil Taylor knew that the music came through him, knew that he was a shaman in some kind of sense. And he didn't take responsibility. Look at this beautiful thing that I made. It's just look at this beautiful thing. And it's how you present it. And he really presented it as look at this beautiful thing. He didn't, it's not look at this thing that I made, which is what so many artists do.
Yeah. See, the examples I give, I'm glad we're into this, Henry. The examples I give sometime is Clyde, James Brown's drummer. They go, "You're the architect of funk drumming. Where'd you get your sound from?" He says, "I lived in Ohio, and there was a factory on one side of my house, and what's the other thing? Something else on the other side of his house, in a train track. So he heard boom, boom, he heard that growing up." They asked Ginger Baker, "Where'd you get your drum sound from?" He goes, "I was in London when they were bombing. Boom, 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 boom." And then this guy from Negative Land. He said Missy Elliott, the rap star, they asked her, "Where'd you learn how to sing?" And she said, "Car alarms."
Soundscape is always an important part of music, and in traditional cultures where people are still living out in nature, the soundscape around them, the animals, the natural sounds, the weather is a big factor in their music. That's part of the sonic language they live in. So it becomes part of their music. But can I pause for 1 second? Because I have a Cecil Taylor story I love to tell.
Please.
So I knew Cecil Taylor for years, and a couple of times I played in large ensembles under his direction. And one time he was playing at Yoshi's, a jazz club in Oakland, California. And there was a matinee. I thought, okay, I'll go to the matinee this week to see it. So I go down there, I get my ticket. I notice Cecil's just getting up from the sushi bar. He comes up to me and says, "Hi, Henry." I say, "Hi, Cecil." And then we walk into the hall. And the deal with Yoshi's then on the Sunday matinees was that kids under high school age were admitted for free, as many as they wanted. And the house was 2/3 kids under the age of 12. And many more younger, and a few parents. And Cecil Taylor stops, and he's just totally taken aback because he didn't know that was going to be like that. And he says, "Young listeners." And I say, "That's right, Cecil. They let kids in for free on Sunday." And he's like, "I didn't know that. Young listeners." And he keeps looking around. He's like, "Whoa, young listeners." Then I go sit down, and I happen to get a seat right in front. And Cecil comes out with the band, which at that time was a vibes player and a bass player and a drummer, 3 white guys. And he goes and he sits down at the piano, and then he grabs a microphone and he says, "Welcome, young listeners." And all of the band members go like, "What?" He's talking, because he doesn't talk to the audience ever. No. "Welcome, young listeners. Welcome, young listeners." And then he pauses. He says, "Before we play, we're going to tell you about each of our instruments." And the guys are looking at Cecil like, what the heck? And he says, "So we'll start with the drums. Tell us about the drums." And the guy says, "Well, these are the drums." He says, "No, tell them more." And he says, and then he stops. He says, "Now play a little for them to demonstrate." And so I guess he's doing Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra or something like that. And then he says, "The bass, now the big bass." And then the bass player says, "Okay, this is the bass, and I have this bow, and I do that." And he does what he told the drummer to do, talks. And then it's the vibes player. And the vibes player is kind of really hyper, kind of like Richard Simmons, the exercise host. And he's like, "These are the vibes. I run these little mallets over it. It's like a little kitten scampering across." And he's kind of like really affected and does that for about 30 seconds. He says, "That's enough." And stops him. And everybody's paying attention. And then Cecil says, "And then the piano." And then he doesn't know what to say. And he goes, "Yes, the piano. I will play it." And then You know how sometimes you'd see him hit his whole arm along the piano?
Yeah.
And he goes, bam, ba, bam, ba, bam, ba, bam, ba, bam, ba, bam, ba, bam. And I realize, and the whole audience realizes he's playing Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill
Oh my God.
in clusters. And then the whole show, he didn't tell the band everything he played. You know, he played Old King Cole. He played The Farmer in the Dell. He played some Mother Goose. All he did was play children's rhymes, and in his style, those would be the rhythmic seeds for what he did, and the band just fits in with him.
Wow.
And the kids, every kid there knew what he was doing,
Oh
and I
my.
don't, and I think less than half the adults knew he was doing that, and he did that to connect with the kids, and it was something he'd never done before, and it just came through him, and it was so amazing. That was I've seen Cecil a lot, and that was my favorite. I just, sorry to interrupt the stream there, but isn't that a good story?
Oh no, that's not, dude. I'm open for tangents, anecdotes, stories. That's what
Yeah.
it's all about, dude.
And then so it's over, and I go back to the sound man in the booth, and I say, please, did you record that? He said, no.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Henry, that's a great Tom Waits quote. The best music doesn't want to be recorded.
Yeah.
I love that one too. That's a beautiful story. And did you ever hear that Don, I spoke with Don Van Vliet 52 times in 1991. He called me
I know.
once a week on the phone. And he would call Cecil Taylor Cecil.
Cecil. Cecil, yeah.
Well, Cecil, yeah. He would just pronounce it differently. That's a beautiful story. And that's, again, being aware of the audience. So, my question is can art making be egoless? I'll tell you the history. Most people go, no. And then one woman about a year ago says, great art is egoless. And then another woman said, it has to be egoless. So I think it wraps around me trying to ask you to suss out the main theme of part one in August was get out of my own way. So I like that term that you gave to me, those words. And I actually Googled it this morning in various ways. I said, what musician first said that? Or who has said that? And I'm going to read you a couple of these, and then I would like you to suss out what get out of my own way means a little deeper. You will love this. Marty Ballin in 2018. I try to get out of my own way. I try to get into the trance of the music, and suddenly I'll hear the lines in my head. And then Julian Cameron, The Artist's Way. She said, get out of your own way. And then the one that really stood out was Jack Kerouac said, forget yourself for a while and see what clarity lifts to the surface. First of all, where do you think you learned get out of my own way? Did it just come naturally, or somehow?
I think I listened to artists who did that.
Yeah.
And I saw it as I was getting older and going to performances. But since I lived where there was the freeform radio of the late 1960s in California and listener-sponsored radio, I'd hear Indian music and Persian music and electronic music and experimental music. I grew up seeing the Grateful Dead and Captain Beefheart, and I saw all those kinds of things. And I noticed that many of the people who improvised would try to get out of the way, and the music came from somewhere else, Grateful Dead with Dark Star.
Yeah.
Any Japanese shakuhachi player who has the Zen tradition of shakuhachi playing left in him, it's totally get out of the way. Persian music, it's get out of the way. Hindustani music is an interesting balance between here's our tradition and get out of the way, because part of our tradition is getting out of the way. And that, that's and African music and most trance musics, Korean music, shaman music, get out of the way.
Yeah, I understand that, Henry. And when I talked to Don Preston, the great keyboardist, he said, don't think. And I'm like, yeah, right. I didn't say this direct to him, but I'm like, yeah, right. How do you not think? Because you have a Rolodex in your head of licks and situations that you put your fingers to on the guitar. How is that getting out of your own way? You can't ignore that you have this knowledge of other things you played in the past and the other musicians who are on the stage with you or not. I'm just trying to
No,
get.
no, it's just get out of the way. I see you ignore all that. I ignore all that. And also I come from a martial arts training background, Shintaido, obscure Japanese martial art. And when you're doing partner exercises or whatever, kumite, you get out of the way. You don't think about the moves and the training and things like that. You just react and are in the moment.
But is that like, Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And the people who meditate go, okay, now think about not thinking. You're still thinking about not thinking. You're still
No,
thinking. How do
I'm
you avoid
I'm
thinking
just
about,
I'm
yeah,
just gone. I'm just gone. I leave. I leave. Yeah,
I leave?
you know.
Well, you articulated it well. I appreciate that. What do you think the motive of the cave artists was, the cave musicians and the cave dancers?
You know, I've never liked looking at images of cave art, and I never liked my friend Werner Herzog's film about the cave art in France. So, cave art, it's just something like mayonnaise that I don't care for, that I don't consume.
Yeah.
So I have no idea because I don't think about it. I just,
But
it's
but but even just knowing that humans invented music, didn't they? Did humans invent music?
uh, well, it depends how you define music. Yeah. But I mean, there's music in the natural soundscape, but it takes a human to perceive, to hear that tree falling in the forest and think it's music, right?
Yeah. But that's,
Um,
it's like when I ask people what was the first human invention, the first things human invented. And they'll go, a tool. My favorite answer ever was lying. And, the great South American theater of the oppressed says theater. And then when another person says line, you draw a line. But somewhere along early on, we probably invented music in that. Is it biomimicry? Did we hear the birds whistling and they go, oh, we can do that?
I don't know. I wasn't around. I don't, that's one of the things I don't worry about.
I know it's not worry. I'm saying your hunch or your guess. Is it the same of why people play music now as it was then? Did it change?
I don't know because I
Oh,
don't have enough information about normal society and things like that to know.
yeah,
I'm just in my local environment, and that's a question that's pretty far outside of my local environment.
totally fine. Thank you. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
That's a good question. I'd say equal, probably.
Yeah.
It
You've,
depends about what. The different
yeah,
things are more important for
yeah,
different topics.
yeah. Well, that's my first question. You might know her. I got my first questions from Christine McKenna because I read her interviews with Don Van Vliet. Her whole situation with Don and David Lynch and all these great filmmakers and artists. And she said, what's more important, conviction or compromise? It took 25 years before someone goes, depends on what you mean by important. So they shifted the emphasis off the
Yeah.
two. My other favorite was these two kids, 10 years old and 8-year old, these brothers. I goes, what's more important, conviction or compromise? And they said, those words are too big for us. In your accomplishments, Henry, how do you rate these three elements, luck, skill, and ambition? What played the biggest role, second and third?
um, luck first. I don't know if ambition's the right word. I'd say the curiosity. I don't have ambition. I have curiosity.
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah. So luck, curiosity, skill. Luck, most important.
Yeah. Good.
Serendipity,
Serendipity.
education, what you got educated in.
It's good. Gary Player says the more you practice, the luckier you get. And I appreciate that you change the words, because a lot of times people go, well, I don't like your three choices: purpose, destiny, persistence, need. There's other ones that aren't listed in those, but I got that question from Christine McKenna too. And she originally asked it like this: is ambition, and this is more your observations of other people, is ambition based more on fear or joy?
It'd be joy with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm not so fear motivated.
and your observations of humans, if you were just going to make a general, you would think other humans' ambition is based more on fear or joy.
I don't know. I am a trained diver, trained at age 11 by people who were underwater demolition team in World War II, who taught that having fear in an environment where there's risk or danger is not a good idea.
Wow, that's heavy, because you know what, Henry? When I first asked that question, right from Christine McKenna for years, I'd say, is ambition based more on fear or joy? 80 to 90% of people would go fear. And so then I read Friedkin, the Exorcist director. He said, in Hollywood, skill and luck have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition. So I changed the wording on the question because of that. Because it was too simple. If I just give them two choices, they'll just go fear or joy.
You know, let's look at David Lynch, who you were talking about. So those early films, is that luck and skill? I think so.
Well, I'd say it's ambition,
The
because
early,
he's stuck in the first of all, he tries to make Francis Bacon into his first short film. Good, you know, he's a Buñuel wannabe. Then he goes to AFI and starts delivering the Wall Street Urinal to make money to make Eraserhead. I would say Eraserhead, there was a lot of ambition. He had a vision and he accomplished it. I would say that's his best film.
yeah,
But yeah,
it is one of his best films for sure.
Yeah. And so, you know, he had skill. He knew how to put it together. He had luck. Privileged white dude going to art school and going to AFI, and he had ambition. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, it's kind of a stupid question. It's just a prompt to get people to discuss. Yeah. T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Colors and shapes and space that look like a Jordan Belson film, like a particular type of abstract film from the 1960s and 70s.
That is so. I love when you bring up Jordan Belson. Okay, did you go to that planetarium and see Belson films in San Francisco? Where'd you encounter them?
You're talking about the Vortex events. Those are before, like I'm 5 and 7 years old when those are happening. Those are too early for me. So I first saw it when I went to experimental film screenings and saw Jordan's films. And at the very beginning of college, there was a Universal touring package that had Momentum and Samadhi in it. And I saw those. And then I met Sheldon Renaud, who was the new director of the new Pacific Film Archive at that time. And he'd written a book about specifically filmmakers like Jordan Belson. And he introduced me to Jordan Belson. Then I was friends with Jordan Belson for the rest of his life. And Jordan Belson is as big an influence on the music that I produce, play, or record than any musician is. Just as big an influence. He's a huge influence on me.
It's beautiful. So it's so important that you express this stuff to me, because I have that Sheldon book. I having gone to the Ann Arbor Film Festival for 30 years, I was lucky to experience experimental film early on in my life and form an aesthetic for it. And did Jordan ever talk about Kubrick's influence in being influenced by him in making 2000?
Yeah, everybody knew that, but that's probably through Douglas Trumbull to Kubrick, not directly to Kubrick.
Right. But did Jordan say I'm honored, or he ripped me off, or did he have any sort of
nothing negative to say about that?
Yeah.
Nothing, of course, that happened much earlier. I'm still in high school in 10th grade when 2001 came out. And I went to see it twice the first 2 days it was open. And it was the longer cut before they cut 25 minutes out of it.
Yeah.
And it was so much better.
Wow.
And they have the long cut, but Kubrick's daughter blocked its release.
No, I didn't know that. Well, do you know this one? They asked Kubrick, why'd you make 2001 in the Playboy interview? And he said, to convolate McLuhan. Isn't that great? And then Henry, he invited Marshall to the first pre-release screening in New York, and Marshall fell asleep after 10 minutes. Now, then he probably woke up and saw it, but it is an amazing film, and it's,
actually, let me get this. Let me move and ask somebody a question. So that's one of my 3 favorite films. My 3 favorite films are 2001, Saragossa Manuscript, a Polish film, and Seven Samurai. And I just want to see, can you stand up, please, Brandy? We're doing an interview here. So my wife, the artist painter, Brandy Gale, she's, tell him she can't hear you because I have headphones on.
Oh,
look here. Why is 2001 your favorite film?
Don't put me on the
No,
spot.
please, no, anything. Just free associate.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. My dad took me to see it when it came out, and I was really young, and it made an impression on me that lasted my whole life. And it's just a really good memory for me. And it's a beautiful poem of a movie.
Why do you think Kubrick made 2001? What, because it's so different from what he'd done before?
I don't know, a challenge. I never thought about that, but a challenge, I suppose.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's really good. Yeah. You see, Henry, she's Canadian, right? She's born in Canada. Yeah, that's it. Because Marshall was Canadian, and that's why he could observe American culture better, because he's one step removed. So she got it. That was beautiful. I love that. And all the power to her. I'd love to see her art, and I'd love to have her on my podcast someday. But I'm curious in regards to talking to, I wanted to go into film a little here too. This is a good intro. I asked Michael Apted over 40 years ago, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922. Marty Scorsese said, I cut my films faster because of MTV. So this was in the 80s when MTV was really introducing to us this rapid montage technique more in the mainstream. And so Michael,
it was
let me say the question first. Sure. If you could. And Michael Apted says, because we've learned to take in information faster. So the question is, are we literally able to learn to take information faster, or are we just brainwashed we believe we can?
You have to take in, when you're living in a natural environment where there's wild critters and you have to forage for food and things like that, you have to have global awareness, and you have to take in a lot of information much faster than people who live in the city where everything's safe. So I think human brains were always ready for fast montage, because there's fast montage, in the ocean when you're fishing, there's fast montage in the forest when you're hunting, there's fast montage in war and conflict. Yeah. So I think that's just a normal thing.
But is multitasking actually possible? Is it?
I think sometimes humans have to do that to survive.
Yeah.
it's life or death.
Yeah. Is perception reality?
Reality is probably in the mind, but yeah, it's a subset of the real world.
Subset. I like that. McLuhan probed Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, saying artists dream awake. It's not to sound elitist, but everybody has this ability to create these amazing scenarios in the middle of the night and dream. And what Finnegan's Wake was sort of saying is you can dream while you're awake. It's like Beckett's saying that the wake isn't about a dream. It is a dream if you read it out loud with a group of people. Have dreams played a role in your creative process?
I don't dream narrative dreams with humans or reality in it. The only dreams I have look exactly like Jordan Belson films.
It's great.
I saw the films and it's like, oh, I've seen all this stuff. And when I talked to Jordan about it, and he's like, yes, you understand, when I'm saying this in the film, you understand it because you know the language. So
But
that's my natural, that's all I dream. I've never had a dream with a person or a story or a
right.
real environment, just colored lights in space.
But Henry, you don't have to answer this, but I'm curious, what's the roots of your ability to do that and be able to articulate it? Is the way you were raised, or somewhere along the line you're going to art, and seeing this? Because this guy, I want you to watch the podcast I did. Moritz Eckert, he's a great German composer, and he said he learned music early on when he was in the car, and he would put his ear to the window and he would hear what would eventually become music. So, I mean, did you have that? Like, I'm sort of curious, did you ever take any psychedelic drugs or any mind altering things? Was that a gateway into you?
No. I was that way since I was 2 years old.
Right.
That's all. People are talking about dreams. And when I was a kid, like kindergarten, first grade, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know that. And I know, there's nothing in my sleep with people or stories or me.
Yeah.
It's like being in the ocean, swimming through a reef or something, except it's abstract or non-objective. Yeah.
That's a good.
Yeah.
Well, Jean Cocteau put it this way in regards to flipping it back to filmmaking. He said it's a filmmaker's privilege to be able to allow a large number of people to dream the same dream together and to show us the optical illusions of unreality with the rigor of realism.
Again, I'm somebody who doesn't have the experience. Okay, let's go back to was it 6th grade when I first read Lord of the Rings, when the volumes were first coming out?
Yeah.
And they'd have the songs.
Yeah.
Right. I skipped all the songs. I didn't read the songs. I couldn't relate to the songs. Okay. So it's always been true. Any book I've ever read where there's a dream, I skip it.
Wow.
I skip it because I can't relate to it. It's like that all of a sudden the text on the page is in Thai script or Georgian script that I can't read. I can't relate to the idea what dreams are, and in movies I pretty much ignore.
So like when Hitchcock designed the dream sequence, or when Dolly designed the dream sequence in the Hitchcock film,
I can look at it as a film, but since I don't know dreams, it doesn't make sense because that's not part of my human experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just skip it. Still, if there's a dream in a book, okay, when's it end? I just skip to when it's over because it's not.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
But didn't you feel, we talked about Eraserhead? Isn't Eraserhead very dreamlike?
I just think of it as fantasy or surrealism, and I don't. For me, dreams aren't part of surrealism.
Let's see.
I just don't. I don't know it. It's not something I know. Do you know the Thai language very well?
I don't know it at all.
So let's say there's a paragraph of Thai language in the middle of a book. Are you going to understand what it means? No. Yeah, that's the way a dream is with me.
Yeah.
Just like that.
That's
And my wife's a very active dreamer, and she talks about dreams, and I'm like, you know.
Because maybe I asked you this, but I love New Yorker magazine had an article, neuroscientists or whatever were trying to figure out if babies dream inside the mother's womb, or do you have to be outside the womb and have earthly experiences to be able to dream? And it's sort of like your hunch. What do you think? Can babies dream inside the womb?
What do you think about Thai grammar, Gerry? The way they use the future tense or the past tense. What do you think about it, really? You can't answer that. I can't. There's nothing. It doesn't.
You can't answer it. Yeah,
no,
but you're able to do this, Henry. You have a hunch or a guess, or you just say pass. That's all right. You could say pass.
No, it's just so far out of my experience. I can't understand. I can't even understand the question.
Okay, well, maybe we'll go in the Sunrubber world. Lewis Carroll said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
All the time. That's what I agree with Lewis Carroll, right.
Well, name one impossible thing you believed in.
Oh, let's see. Trying to think of something from real life here. That's where well, a possible thing I believed for a couple of weeks was that AT&T would repair the landline that was down on the ground here for 2 weeks, and they never did. And I believe that they would, but they didn't.
That's good. That's practical.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Sunrock, quoted in New Yorker of all places. The impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change.
Well, I think the world does change once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it changes.
Tell me one major element of your creativeness, your Henryness, that stayed the same, and one major element that's changed in the decades you've been doing it.
Trying to think of what I've changed, because I'm pretty much the same as I was when I was 7 years old. In terms of teleology, how I do things or why I do things?
However, any context you want. That sounds good, but whatever context you want to put it in.
Okay, some things don't change. Everything's always improvised. Everything's always experimental. So that doesn't change.
Yeah.
Let me just ask a question here with these. Hey, have you seen anything change about me in 15 years, Brandy, Gail? My wife says no.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
That's fine. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
There's plenty of technical weaknesses on, like I'm not the master of playing melodies, but then I can play things that are not melodic, that people who play melodies can only play melodies.
That was great wording.
That would say, or let's go back to, give me that quote you mentioned earlier about practice in music. And what was the quote that had the word practice in it early on today? Was it the one with practice and ambition, or what was it? Somebody about
is ambition based more on fear or joy?
No, there was something else about practice. The word practice in music. If you do a text search of your
you mean, I think it was the more you practice, the luckier you get.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry.
So I disagree. So for me, my friend Tsitsiji Munoz, really great Coltrane style guitarist.
Yeah.
He does not play guitar unless it's a recording or a performance. He doesn't touch it. and he has great technical facility, but he doesn't touch the guitar. And I am the same. I don't touch the guitar unless it's a recording, a performance, or I'm working with the equipment to fix it or test something. But otherwise, and I don't play guitar for fun unless it's what the fun is being recorded or performing. So
That's good.
otherwise I don't touch it. So, probably I would have more technical facility if I practiced, but then I might be playing the things I practice, which is not something that's appealing to me. And there's, so many people who practice and practice and practice, and some of them just play what they practice. Some of them put it through the kaleidoscope a little bit. Some people, put some pretty please and sugar sauce on top of it to make it different. But I don't practice, and I think I've made that into I figured out how to make that into a positive thing. There's some things you do have to practice, safety procedures in diving. You need to practice those. There are things you need to practice, but for me, it's not a central part of my musical practice, or even a very ancillary part of my musical practice.
Henry, you're concise and articulate. That was really well answered.
I used the word ancillary. I know I tried. I cheated. Yes.
It was really good. But is that guitarist you just showed the album? Did he record with Pharoah Sanders?
He did record with Pharoah Sanders. Much later, he's made probably 40 or 50 albums, his own label. I've played with him too. And he's remarkable. He's the best Coltrane guitarist. If we look at people like McLaughlin. Well, Sonny's not really Sonny's a mixture of Albert Ayler and Coltrane.
There you go.
And he's something a little different. But the guitarists who really try to do John Coltrane, the only person who really has it right is CG, and he's a shamanic player. And I can point you out some recordings of his that are,
No, but you bringing up John, that's funny, because I saw John and Carlos play the Love Supreme tour, and it really was the Billy Cobham show.
I saw that. I went to buy tickets for that the day of the show for the Berkeley Community Theater in Oakland, and I went into the Sherman Clay ticket agency. I remember to buy it, and she says, "Oh, you're in luck. They just released some tickets." And she says, "Front row center." And I was like, "Really?" She says, "Yes, better buy them quick." And then they didn't have computers, so it was those physical tickets. And so I got tickets to both shows, front row center of the Love, Devotion, Surrender tour. So, and one I was directly in front of Carlos, and the other I was directly in front of McLaughlin. So I got to see that really close up, and that it was a Billy Cobham show, but there are recordings of those shows, and I have recordings of several of those shows, and they're very different from night to night. And that happened to be a really good night, and it was really remarkable. And it was recorded. I later saw the master tapes at CBS Studios in San Francisco, and then I traced where they went, and I always begged Carlos and his management to let me mix the multi-tracks for release, but they never did.
Wow.
Really I was there, Carlos. I was there.
Yeah. No, I saw him in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was a great show. And so I wanted to tell you, you probably know this. Miles Davis has gone to his guitarist before and said, "Play like you don't know how to play guitar."
Well, that's what they say he told McLaughlin. But then McLaughlin's playing like he really knew how to play guitar. But I think Miles probably just meant don't play guitar the way everybody hears guitar sounding.
Yeah. But at least Miles' wording is good, because he said it to Barry too, Barry Finnery. Yeah, he said it to him too.
Yeah. I think it's to get him to shut up when they're playing stuff that Miles had heard before.
Well, you had the fortune to play that. I think it was, when I interviewed you in your house 16, 17 years ago, you had the guitar in your lap while we were talking, and you started playing something off of either Jack Johnson or Live Evil.
Yes.
And you did with Leo and Mike Keneally? You did what? Did you do both?
we've made so there's 3 2 CD sets, and there's a couple of other live albums that are download only of Yo Miles. Wadada Leo Smith and I 20 years ago did the majority of Miles' electric repertoire and original tunes of Leo's in a similar way. So I'd studied that material. I know that material very well. I was friends with Pete Cozy, who is my favorite guitarist with Miles from 1973.
Yeah.
I met him, and then he was there for a couple of years. And I know that material very well. I love that music. I love playing that music because
Love it.
it's seeds for music rather than formal compositions, more or less. There's
Seeds,
a
SEEDS.
SEEDS, seeds. It's
It is.
seeds. It's seeds for music. That then the music develops out of. If you listen to how things are different, say of the 1975 tour of Japan, they're
Yeah.
playing things with the same bass lines, and Miles might play a little heads, but every time it would come out completely different.
Yeah. That's why I think Tio plays a big part in Live Evil.
Teo's editing is a huge part. And when we made the first and all the other Yo Miles records, I was very aware of what Tio had done, and I functioned as the Tio in the editing. And after we did the first Yo Miles, I got a cold call from Tio in the middle out of nowhere who said, "You understood what Miles was doing and you understood what I was doing. Thank you so much."
Wow, that is heavy because I don't like to hear these. Here's the 6 hours of where Live Evil came from. I'm like, don't do that. I want to hear Live Evil as it was intended, and I don't want to hear that. I know some people like that because there's over 100 Zappa CDs that have come out since he died. Frank wouldn't have approved that. He made his, so it's fine. Some people like that, but I hit a button on YouTube once and I didn't realize I was hearing the outtakes of Live Evil, and I freaked out. I'm like, oh no, because I know it like every note for note, and I don't, appreciate when they do that, but I know for study purposes, and that goes into archiving, Henry. I'm curious.
Yeah, and there are great lost solos by people in what that he didn't put on because it didn't fit what the project was turning into. So I kind of like having all that stuff because I like looking for the unique special things that that happened once and never happened again.
Yeah, but this is to archive, and I'm going to set it up. The word came out etymologically in 1400, keep safe, free from harm. 200 years later, archive etymologically means record preserved as evidence. That's what we sort of know it as. But Charles Baudelaire says, if you try to make a statement long, deep, and rich, it will age very fast. If you try and only own the day you're talking, it will last forever. Or as David Lee Roth said, here today, gone later today. There's 2 questions I'm basically asking, and I'll set it up a little more. Is archiving more innate or more invented? And do you have plans for your own archive? And this is the thing. Didn't Ram Dass teach us, be here now, live in the moment? That's what's important, to live in the moment. Why do we have to collect all this shit? I know it's important. We're both historians. We're both collectors. But the futurists said, destroy all museums and libraries. Now, I go to a library every day, but I like that they thought that up because I think it is important to live in the moment. As Wyndham Lewis said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So your thoughts on this? And, the Egyptians put stuff in their coffin with them. Why is archiving more innate or more invented? And do you have plans for your own archive?
Yeah, I when I'm dead, I don't care if anybody listens to me. I don't care if I'm remembered. I don't. If I die, I don't want to. I'd rather there's no memorial for me. I'd just rather disappear. But there's certain. I wish I had every single Miles Davis recording from the 1975 tour of Japan, and they have them, and they could have put out a box of them, but they don't. There's things I wish I had that are archives. I know I just looked today because I was discussing whether the credits for Ornette Coleman science fiction album called Science Fiction, were correct on which tracks Ed Blackwell and Billy Higgins play drums on, because there's two tracks where it says it's Billy Higgins, but it sounds like Ed Blackwell. And so I went to look online for this, used to be online, in Ornette Coleman's sessionography, not a discography, set that listed all the sessions he'd done,
Yeah.
and it was gone. I was upset because there are all these great unreleased albums that Ornette made and finished to release as albums in the later part of his career. Some made for Artist House, some made for other labels, that never got released. And you could at least have the little fantasy of looking at them there and seeing what was on them. And that sessionography is gone. So as an archive, I liked that sessionography, and I liked having that information about a particular set of heroes of mine. So I like archives to look at. I like being able to see every Jordan Belson film. I would like it if you could click online and see every Jordan Belson film instead of them just being restricted to showing in one place where not many people see them, as it had been for years, but now more things are accessible. But archives, I guess they're useful to academics who want to write about things, and maybe that's important sometimes.
But is that need or want to archive more innate or more invented by humans?
I think it's just the chipmunks storing up the peanuts for the winter in the in the hole in the tree. I think it's just that. I think that's the need. That's the need. It's nourishment being stored.
And Henry, you said you don't care, but does Brandy know if you die, what is she supposed to do with your archive? Is there any plan? Do you have any college that stores your masters? They're all there?
No, I'm just going to, here, let's go see the masters.
No, that's all right. I believe.
No. It's funny. It's funny. I have to show it. So, since I'm an old dinosaur and started making records in 1976, there are a lot of tapes, okay?
Yeah.
So for 15 years, those tapes have been on this shelf here.
Yeah.
A lot of tapes.
Yeah.
And those are never going to get archived or copied. It's too expensive to, and nobody cares. So it'll go to the dump when we move from this house. They'll be gone. Nobody wants them.
And
that's what'll happen.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I'm just being realistic. And there's nothing, if it was, worth $5,000, then it's worth it for Brandy to take $5,000 for it, and be able to go on a nice vacation or something. But its continuance has no utility for me, and I'm on so many records. So there's about 185 records that have my name on the cover, and I'm on about I think 630 something records right now, if you look at Discogs. So I'm just happy with what's out there.
Yeah. Okay, since you are also a teacher in so many ways over the years, here's a question that McLuhan posed in 1957. It's misleading to suppose there's any basic difference between education and entertainment. It's like setting up a distinction between didactic and lyric poetry on the ground that one teaches and the other pleases. However, it's always been true that whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So I'm curious your thoughts of what's the difference between entertainment and education, and this line, whatever pleases teaches more effectively.
Well, I try to, they're equal for me. They're the same thing for me. And if I do something like my many video shows I've done in these past years since 2020, I'm trying to be both entertaining and educational at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think some people in the audience, the educational is the medicine and the entertainment makes it go down smoother. And other people, it's the other way around. The entertainment is the medicine and the education makes that go down smoother.
Yeah.
So I think it's just how I think that they're interwoven, and to see them as separate in art, because art generally both educates and entertains.
Yeah. Because one guy, most people go, that's true. Whatever pleases teaches more effectively. But one guy actually said, no, whatever displeases teaches more effectively.
Maybe I don't think of a difference between please and displease.
Well, my line is great art fucks your shit up and it makes you go, I can do that. So I saw Fred Frith play at McCabe's once, and he looks up after not Fred, Derek Bailey. And
Derek.
he looks up after 5 minutes and goes, no one's left yet. And so then and then I probably saw Fred and they stick knitting needles in between the strings and all that. And I goes, I can do that. And then I go home and try it. And I goes, boy, it doesn't sound as good as they did it.
No, he's an artist at that. Yeah, he's an artist at that.
Well, you brought up storytelling and narrative, and I have two questions in that regard. One is Hollis Frampton, one of the great experimental filmmakers. Narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. And I came up with this question, Henry. Can you forget to die?
No, like one of TCG's Munoz's albums is called "Death Is a Friend of Mine."
Yeah.
So I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I really don't.
But then that would mean you are forgetting to die.
No, I know I'll die.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know that 100%. You can't forget that, but I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Of course, I drive safe, I put on the seatbelt.
Yeah.
I don't in that sense, but there are people who worry about it all the time. I can think of a particular neighbor whose whole life is somebody who's had a lot of health trouble, and their whole life and the way they treat other people is based on fear of dying, and they're angry all the time because they're afraid of dying. And that's not a lot of fun,
No.
If as Cecil Taylor said, to quote another quote of Cecil's from that documentary on him, if it's not fun, why do it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's anyways, we'll touch on that in a second. I want to go into narrative and storytelling. In this guy who went to high school with Dylan, he became his road manager, and now he's a religious guy. When I interviewed him, he said, someone told me the difference between narrative and storytelling is that narrative does not lie. Any thoughts on what is the difference, if any, between narrative and storytelling, and this idea that narrative doesn't lie?
So I think of it differently. I think of narrative as a subset of storytelling, and it's a structural element. Like a different kind of narrative is a frame story, where somebody's telling a story, then somebody in that story starts telling. Yeah. Those are different narrative levels. So I think of it as a technical part of storytelling, narrative.
Yeah.
Do you have a different meaning for the word narrative?
No, I'm just asked these questions because I'm curious people's take.
There's experimental writers who would write books or stories that were told backwards.
Yeah.
Backwards in time. So that's just reverse narrative. But it's part of storytelling. Storytelling is the outer package, and that's just part of the workings inside narrative.
Yeah.
I know I recently made an album called The Wolf at the Door, where it's a 2 CD set. It's on the Sub Rosa label out of Belgium. And the first CD is a solo baritone guitar CD. I was friends with the science fiction writer Gene Wolfe, who's one of my favorite science fiction writers. Yeah. And he was a master of different kinds of narrative experiments and narrative and stuff. And on that record, I'd pick a Gene Wolfe book or short story that I knew well, think of its narrative structure, and then I'd do an improvisation that related to what I knew or remembered about the narrative structure and Gene Wolfe's experiments in narrative structure in that in that work. And so they're titled after the things of his, and they're all relating to Gene Wolfe narrative structural elements.
Beautiful. I love how you put it in context like that, Henry, because someone I says narrative does not lie. I'm just saying your thoughts on that. He goes, no, storytelling does not lie. So people interpret it different ways, and you sussed
Yes,
it out.
but wait, no, wait a minute. What about the unreliable narrator, the narrator who lies to the reader?
That's
And that's a big part of many of Gene Wolfe's things is the unreliable narrator, and it could be intentional on the part, or it could be, for example, his several books of his set in ancient Rome. There's a trilogy where the central character has Korsakoff syndrome. Do you know what that is?
Tell me.
That's where your memory lasts about 12 hours and then you forget everything that's happened before. And so this guy has to carry a scroll around with little notes to help him remember who he is, where he's going, and what he's doing. That makes him an unreliable narrator because he can't remember what's happened before when he writes something. So
that's very Joycean, because Joyce is Menippean satire. What you just explained is Menippean satire. And Joyce nailed it in Finnegan's Wake. He said, remember to forget. So that unreliable, he reminds me of that honest liar thing. Okay, so here's, in regards to this storytelling, writing, narrative, Milan Kundera, Unbearable Likeness of Being. That is why I love writing, because the character that I'm writing about can go further than I can. Yeah, right. That sounds romantic. If I write a character on this piece of paper, how can that go further than I can?
Yeah.
Is it over romanticizing the writing process, you think?
No. Right. I mean, writing is romantic when it's beautiful, and it's easy for writing to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it can be just like me. It's just like music. It can be so many different things.
Yeah. But this is two people saying this similar. Okay. Lakoff, the neuroscientist linguists, say we're operating 20% consciously, 80% unconsciously or subconsciously. That's not right. I think we've been going an hour. I think we're both been consciously here present. But Steve Martin loves to quote David Mamet, art is a product of the unconscious mind. That sort of sounds like I got to get out of my way. And then Maria Callas says, in order to be a performer, you have to have half your brain in control and half of it out of control. So any thoughts on this? Art is the product of the unconscious mind.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the unconscious mind or if it's, the external, Korean Sanawi spirits. A friend of mine who's a very successful, famous Korean woman, traditional musician, said to me, Henry, I listened Coltrane Love Supreme. I not understand. He play with gugok phrasing. How he play with gugok phrasing? And so gugok phrasing is Korean traditional music playing. And I said, well, let's think about it here. I said, let me look up. And so I go on to Discogs and I look at the time of Love Supreme, which is what's that, 64, 60? I can't remember what it is. I look it up, and I look up releases of traditional Korean music in the US. And there's like 2 records on Folkways, nothing else. And then I look up his Korean touring. He could not have heard it. And then there is gugok phrasing, and he could not have heard it. And I said, I have an idea, Suyo, on what happened. So he was making this big spiritual record after getting off of drugs and things. And he was, in the beginning, it's like a prayer where he's invoking for the holy, a Christian Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit to come down, and come through him. And for that spirit to come through him. And I says, what I think happened was he was asking for a spirit, and he accidentally got the Korean spirits instead. And they had it. And she says, oh, that makes a lot of sense, she said.
She liked that.
Yeah, she liked that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does play gugok phrasing, and I don't think he could have heard it. Because it's not anywhere he could have heard it back then.
Wow.
So, we did that Love Supreme Electric album with Vinnie Golia and Mike Watt and John Hanrahan and Wayne Pete when keep on piano,
Yeah.
and that where we played a Love Supreme and Meditations by Coltrane as if they're one big suite, and that was really fun to make. And we've been wanting to make another record, and we're going to be in LA making another record at the beginning of March, which we had an interesting idea. So, and we're going to add Anthony Pirogue on guitar, and I said, what about if we did Sonny Chirac tunes in the Coltrane style? And he's like, that's a good idea. And then I looked at Sonny Chirac's sort of comeback album called Guitar that Bill Laswell produced, which is pretty much all the tracks are just 2 guitar tracks, an overdub on another guitar track. And I thought, this album sounds like demos for Coltrane music.
Wow.
To be realized with piano, saxophone, bass, and drums. And so we looked at it that way, and it's exactly like that. So we're really looking forward to, invoking those spirits, whatever the Coltrane spirits are, whichever ones the different ones of us bring in to do that Sonny Chirac music. As Sonny, who was a friend of mine, loved Coltrane stuff. And
I love Sonny. And I Seize the Rainbow is my favorite, and Ask the Ages is pretty good. In fact, Ask the Ages, I don't know how in the heck, that's 3 words from Finnegan's Wake. I don't know how they got that. But this thing about Nels Cline when he was a record store clerk at Rhino Records. I says, what do you think of Sonny Chirac? He says, I want to like him a lot more than I do. And Sonny was really, and I wanted to go into Bertolt Brecht because this is back into that trance thing. He says, I don't want art that pacifies me or puts me in a trance. I want art that activates me. But like we said, you can go into a trance and it can indeed activate you. The trancing can activate you. So Bertolt Brecht asked Charles Laughton, the great filmmaker, why do you act? And Laughton said, because people don't know what they are like, and I think I can show them.
That's great.
I know. Any thoughts on that in regards to you and your music pursuits and all these people you've talked about?
Well, see the way he worded that, he wants to show them, I want to show them. That wouldn't be my attitude. It's like if somebody didn't know what they were like, if I got out of the way and I can hold my hand up and get hit by lightning that would kill them, and they can touch my hand and the lightning gets to them, that way the lightning gets to them, but it doesn't have anything to do with me except getting out of the way.
Yeah. And here's,
so I don't have a purpose with the audience other than to try to see what shows up and let the audience have a conversation with that.
Yeah. Really appreciate your time, Henry. This is great. We got about 15 more minutes. Here's the Eno quote I wanted you to react to, if any. Play is how children learn. Art is how adults play.
Well, it should be the same all the time. Art and play should be, art should be for play, should be for learning, and art should be for play. That's so same thing for me, always doesn't change.
Louis Buñuel said, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. And then Eartha Kitt said, truth is a theory which is constantly being disproved. Only lies, it seems, go on forever. This is a Marcel Proust question. On what occasion do you lie?
Well, if you're an unreliable narrator of the story, you can lie in the story for part of the story. Because that's part, but when do I lie? I don't think I do that with guitar. I don't think I do that in the studio. I don't have much need to, I don't think, in what I do day to day.
Yeah.
I don't think that shows up, officer, I wasn't going that fast. I use the cruise control, so I know that not going to get stopped for speeding. Um,
Yeah.
so when do I lie? I think I don't much. Not that I
You know,
remember. I don't
um,
think that's a. I don't think that's a lie. I
yeah,
don't think
that's
that's a
amazing.
lie. You go off in the room full of mirrors there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's um, this fashion person said, "On what occasion do you lie?" And she goes, "That's called manners." But I like Tom Waits. He says, "I didn't know I needed an occasion."
Yeah.
Utah Phillips said, "Anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?"
Mm, just the universe, and that's physical rules like gravity and stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah,
But here you got the old diver talking. Sometimes there's rules for safety. Don't
yeah,
dive. Don't dive alone. Dive with a buddy. There's rules for safety. So those kind of rules are important. I
yeah,
guess rules that functionally and truly protect other people and protect you. Um, there's rules for the way the military are supposed to conduct a war that protect civilians, for instance,
yeah,
right? And so those are really good rules, and the more proper and functional those rules are, the better. Uh, whether they follow them or not, but sometimes rules are important.
yeah. Well, it's funny because what Utah said is exactly how the word freedom etymologically breaks down. Freedom comes from giving oneself one's own laws. What does freedom mean to you now?
Mm. I'm trying to think of that by when do I feel freedom is impinged. Um, Trying to think of if there's rules that I suddenly realize I can disregard or something, but not much. Uh, I mean, I'm always a free player. I'm not ever complaining that I'm not free when I play in music.
There you go.
I'm not, there's not rules for stopping me from making the kinds of musical projects and collaborations I like to do with people.
Yeah.
So I'm not running up a lot against rules.
Well, here's the flip on it, Henry. There's a line that goes, "You create what you resist." Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into, "You are what you hate." In fact, James Joyce said, "It's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve." And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." So this whole thing about you create what you resist. Any thoughts? And I'm not saying you, but it's more like one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that?
That probably happens sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not an area I think about, so I don't have a quick feeling or an answer. It's probably something I'm kind of blind to, whatever it is. I could be blind to it with myself. I don't know.
What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Seems same to me.
That's what the answer I always love to hear. Thank you.
I just let's talk about another science fiction writer for a second, since we've hit on several science fiction writers. James H. Schmitz. Do you know who that was?
No, spell
Science
the
fiction.
last name. How do you spell last name?
Schmitz. James H. Schmitz.
Okay.
So this guy, unpredictably, before feminism in the United States, before anybody else, in the late 1940s, he writes with men and women absolutely equal. And
Wow.
he doesn't beat it into the ground. They just are. And then all his books, he does that. And he's kind of forgotten now. And he's kind of known in science fiction for when feminist authors came along later and made women as strong and as powerful as men. he'd already done that. And they, people look back to him and kind of nod their head, but his stuff's not in print so much anymore. But I just was rereading some of it, and I'm just kind of always amazed. Here's this guy really early on saying, there's no difference. And I guess it's because he thought that himself. And he's somebody who'd come out of World War II, was born in Germany, was an immigrant to the US, worked as a journalist, and he was a smart guy and a really good writer. And in his later years in the 60s, he always would generally have female heroines who were very capable and didn't need guys' help, but he didn't beat it into the ground or make a big point of it.
It's beautiful. You teach me a lot about sci-fi too, because I never knew Theodore Sturgeon was a musician until you told me. And that was really heavy, because him being a hero to both Zappa and Phil Lesh. Okay, Henry, these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. 1, who started it all?
It's not something I think about, so I don't have an opinion.
No worries. 2, are we going to make it?
Yeah, so far, so good.
3, where do we put it?
I don't know. A little voice said in our hearts, but I
Oh,
don't know.
that's the answer I love to get, in fact. I
That's
love when instead of, where do you put it? There's another smart ass answer. That in our hearts is good. Number 4 is who's cleaning it up?
I do.
Very
Here.
good.
I do here. I do the dishes.
Yeah. Number 5, is it serious?
Not too serious. Not very.
Couple more and we're out of here, Henry. Thanks. How do you find peace of mind?
Nature.
Yeah.
Being in the water, being in the ocean, being under the ice. Greatest peace of mind ever, being under the ice in Antarctica.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Right on. Go ahead. So I was an emancipated minor when I was 14, and I was ready for that when I was 12.
Yeah.
So when I think back to myself, it's all about encouraging myself to be an emancipated minor when I was 14. And I learned that concept from reading the Robert A. Heinlein science fiction novel, The Star Beast.
Nice.
And I later met, after I was an emancipated minor, I met Heinlein when I was 15, and I told him, thank you so much for mentioning that. And he says, great. And he was really happy. And oddly, right now, the house I live in, and have lived in for 15 years, is about 8 or 10 minutes away from the house that Heinlein lived in for the last decades of his life, right here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really powerful writer.
And I just made an album that's coming out in February called The Sound of the Stars with Tori Elgaroy, a Norwegian musician, where a lot of the tracks are titled after Heinlein juvenile novels, and it's sort of my tribute to the strong effect those had on me in preparing me to deal with life on my own without any adults being responsible for me.
You've done fine, Henry. Thank you. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Off the top, always. Off the top, and yes, and away from the wall, right?
If a publisher was going to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be? And yeah, what would the
I would kill it. I would kill I don't want it released. I'd kill it.
Well, the second part you got to try to answer. If they did release your autobiography and they wanted to scent the glue in the binding, what smell?
Marshmallow.
That is good. I've never had that. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
What's the most transitive material that you could put 5 miles down in the ocean. There would Jello, 5 miles down in the ocean, made of Jello. So it would,
Nice.
so it wouldn't last.
Very good. I was almost going to say you would want it to be made of marshmallows.
Yeah. No, that would last a little longer.
Henry, tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Maybe to be able to roller skate.
That's a very legit answer. Roller
I mean,
skate.
it's a good thing, but it's I don't want. I'd take ice skating, but I'd pass on roller skating.
If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Well, I'd try to get out of the vat.
Yeah. What's a question that
Or
remains?
do you mean would I duck under the vomit to avoid the bag of shit?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you all the answers I've gotten that have been intriguing, but there's a million things you could do. Mike Kelly said he'd cry. I mean, other people, what? No, my favorite, this woman goes, I wouldn't be in a situation like that. So there's no meaning. This guy I met on the Venice boardwalk was one of my heroes. He hung out with Billie Holiday and Mingus. He was a great guy. He was an altacuck. And he taught me that question. It's sort of like a metaphor for life, you know, if you want to take that attitude. So
I mean,
yeah.
you know, it's probably health wise, it's probably better to close your eyes, hold your breath. If the bag shit's going to hit you if you go down, if you duck down. Yeah. So that would be my survival reaction.
Well, the other one, Henry, is fun. Is this woman said, I'd take the bag of shit and use the velocity to swoop my way out of the vat of vomit. I goes, dude, do you know that is Descent of the Maelstrom? That's the Descent of the Maelstrom, the short story by Edgar Allan Poe. And it's what inspired McLuhan. You can turn a breakdown into a breakthrough.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, of course. That's the best answer.
Yeah. Okay. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
I think about the ones that don't inspire me. I'm trying to think about what might inspire
Dude,
me.
that's amazing, Henry. Most people in the last year have been saying that. I can think of the ones that don't inspire me. I
think of the cultural shift where there's no more CDs of Hindustani music or music from Madagascar and different kinds of music becoming unaccessible. I think, so what's becoming more accessible that I care about?
Yeah.
Not a lot. Not a lot in music.
Can't you find that music on YouTube?
No, not those particular things. Not so much. Not in good quality where the music survives.
Yeah.
And they stopped making telephone videos in Madagascar too. It's just really sad.
Oh.
So much great music and none of it's going to get out. And they can't come to the US on tour because they wouldn't give them a visa, etc. It's bad. It's bad for Malagasy people.
Well, you flipped it. That's fine. You told a cultural shift that doesn't inspire you.
Yeah, but I wish I could. So what inspires me? I mean, a cultural shift inspires me, the shift to home recording. I love real recording studios and what you can do there, but to also be able to record at home is great.
Okay.
The cultural shift to being able to do video editing at home is great. Yeah.
What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
I mean, basically, it's just stuff like, how do you get AT&T to reconnect the phone line when it's been lying on the ground for 2 weeks?
That is a practical thing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's practical stuff.
How has two things? How has diving and music making shaped your behavior?
Diving shapes the behavior most, and then music does with staying within the safety things I've learned from diving. I don't know. They both shape me equally. Movie shape, movie shape,
How,
move,
how has diving shaped? You mean to be aware of safety?
just global awareness, knowing what's going on around you. That's a term from NAUI instruction from the 1960s, global awareness, which goes back to underwater demolition team. Yeah, just being more aware, and music means I found a way to look for more surprises. I like surprises.
Oh, I like
That's one of my things in music, is looking for surprises.
Oh, I like that a lot. Two more and we're out of here. Thornton Wilder in 1928. Art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for hours. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you, Henry?
It's just getting out of the way.
Yeah.
I'm not involved in the content of the music.
Yeah. What gives you the most optimism?
Snowshoe the dog.
Oh, I like that.
Because Snowshoe's personality, he's a Swedish Lapphund. I would describe his personality as merry. He's merry all the time. And so living with a merry dog is a good thing.
And that's spelled Merry.
Right, he's merry.
Well, you brought me a lot of merriment today again, Henry, and I wanted to tell you the first question I asked in part one is, what's the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question I asked is what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. What gives you the most optimism? And he said other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you, Henry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gerry, so much. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you come to LA, come over to the Fialka Funny Farm and I'll fix you a gourmet meal and we'll sit in the yard.
Unfortunately, we got to work around the clock when we're there, from the second we arrive till the second we go there to get things done. Yeah.
Well, someday when you're in LA, come on by and I'd love to talk. But thanks again, and I hope this never ends and we can really keep talking forever and ever.
Good. All right.
Thank you, Henry.
All right, over and out.